Hi, behind me you see one of the best buildings of Basel, which is the power station Birsfelden by Hans Hofmann, built in the early 1950s. It's a must-see when you're in Basel, but I want to show you today another must-see, which is a public space. A public space that is a trajectory along the Rhine from here, from the end of Basel, the beginning of Birsfelden, towards the city of Augst. And this bike path runs along the harbor, between the Rhine and the harbor. There's two harbors, one in Birsfelden, one in Auhafen. It's an insanely beautiful path because you get to see the entire encounter of the landscape of the Rhine and this industrial universe of these harbors. Sadly enough, the harbors of Switzerland, the port of Switzerland, want to close this path. I think this would be very sad because it's one of the most exciting public spaces you can imagine. And before that happens, I think maybe it's good to understand what we would be losing. So come with me and I'll explain you a little bit why this path is so special. This is still the public bike path, and here you can still go normally. This is the sluice building, one of the many buildings that Hans Hofmann built in conjunction with the production, the fabrication of the power plant. On the other side we see the Kraftwerkinsel, the power plant island. It's a man-made island created when the power plant was built, because there was also a sluice built at the same time, and to set off the sluice against the remainder of the river, they needed to insert this land mass. And this is where the official bike path turns to the right, and where you go to the inland area of Birsfelden. However, and this is the most amazing thing, there is this other bike path branching off. Now you see something interesting. First of all, you see this sign, which is totally remarkable because it says, beware, there's danger, potential danger because of the Rhine embankment. You might fall into the Rhine if you don't pay attention with your bike. But also there's basically unloading and loading of ships at the harbor. Then the third paragraph is very important because it says, enter only at your own risk. Now this is very, very important because this is basically the Swiss principle of making spaces like these accessible. But here you see already the gate that was built by the harbor company, which they plan to inaugurate in early May. And from then on, this path would be closed. Now, why would this be a dramatic course of events? Because this path was built in 1973, almost 50 years ago, with the explicit intention to grant access to the public to this specific and very beautiful territory between the river and the harbor on the inland side. In most Rhine harbors, this is not possible. In Germany, downstream the river, harbor areas will basically be off limits to the public. This is not the case here. And the reason why this is beautiful, you will instantly realize if you're here at this building, because this building smells fantastic. It smells coffee. This is a coffee roasting building because the coffee that is transported to Basel via ships from Latin America and Africa, then upstream the Rhine using huge ships, is roasted here and then drunken here. It's just an amazingly beautiful kind of landscape collage of the most contradictory characters. We see the Hornfelsen, there's rock on the other side. We see vineyards terracing down to the river. We see this marina on the other side. We see the Kraftwerkinsel over there, where people chill out and enjoy this condition here, being in a natural environment, but also at the same time a highly industrial territory. And this encounter of industrial and natural characters of the space make this bike path so appealing. And we see the most incredible array of industrial buildings, like this beautiful small caban-like structure. And at the same time, we have to imagine that there's actually hazardous goods that are being transported perpendicular to our sense of direction. But you have signs in Switzerland. There is always a good information about dangers. So this sign says, beware, there's mineral oil being offloaded, and you're not supposed to smoke, obviously. Basically, the ship brings the mineral oil. It is being pumped through these tubes into these tanks. Now here's the catch. In order for this pathway to function in parallel, this bikeway in parallel to the kind of harbor activity, both movements are set off in section vertically, as you can see. The pumps, the tubes are actually going up, and therefore can pump the mineral oil out of the ship into the tank, while freeing space for us to move. Thank you. For us to move through this kind of a gate-like situation. This is the principle by which the engineers in the early 1970s made it possible that both users, the public that wants to use the embankment for a stroll or for a bike ride, and the harbor loading and unloading activity of the ships can happen simultaneously. This is a beautiful principle of spatial coexistence and a fantastic model how infrastructural space can become public space. So you see that a lot of effort was actually poured into the possibility of creating the seamless and continuous movement. I don't ever need to stop. I can just go along as far as the eye can see. And you see that the path is actually really small, and it's being used by pedestrians and cyclists like myself. And you see how people are very respectful and pay attention, vielen Dank, to make room for each other. Even though it's a small path, it's enough space for all that want to use it, if everybody pays attention. You can see there's no guardrails, only there in the front, but mostly this is an unsecured path. And this works because of the Swiss principle of Eigenverantwortung. It means you have yourself the responsibility for your safety. This is a very typical and very interesting principle of democratizing risk in Switzerland, which is very different from other countries. Actually, here's a very good other example. There's a ramp. We go up the ramp, and inside the ramp there's a hole through which a carrier belt can go inside and deliver cement or concrete aggregates inside the harbor loading storage buildings. Here's this wonderful terminal building, cantilevering heroically over the river so that a ship can actually anchor here and be unloaded even during rain, and it will not harm the goods. So we continue. There is now the container terminal. You see the huge running crane that can move on the rails just to the right on top of this heavily graffitied embankment wall. So during weekdays, this machine would run back and fro. Whenever it starts to move, it makes an alarm sound before, so that you're notified and you're prepared that this huge structure actually is about to be set in motion. As I was explaining, Switzerland has this culture of not patriarchally claiming responsibility over the safety of all its subjects, as you would find it in other nations such as Germany or France, where the state is very powerful and claims this authority over its subjects. Switzerland is a different culture, which works very much on the basis of empowerment of its citizens to take care of as many aspects of their life as possible, and the state only intervenes and comes into play when it's necessary to actually coordinate things and make sure that all interests are actually balanced, especially, for instance, the interest between the public and the private. Now, I always wondered, how is it that the Swiss government basically has this trust in its population to basically gauge the risk, the potential risk that may arise from moving through an harbor area? Because there could theoretically and practically occur accidents. There have no accidents been reported by the police to pedestrians and also cyclists. However, it is theoretically possible. The harbor authority wants to close this bike path because they say, who is liable when something happens to somebody, something falls on my head? Now, the sign at the entrance of the harbor actually said it very clearly. I am liable for my own safety. I am responsible. I authorize myself, and I have the freedom and the responsibility to live with the consequences of my curiosity. But in principle, the entire space is really arranged in a way that I can freely access this entire space. And this is utterly beautiful, utterly generous of, I think, the Swiss authorities, and it shows the insane kind of treaty of trust between the political authorities, the administration, the lawmakers, and the subjects of this country. Myself, coming from Germany, I was hugely surprised to see this type of culture. I mean, imagine this culture, this situation here. The asphalt stripe on which I roll is maybe, I don't know, 50 centimeters. You can walk here, but if you're careful, you can also go by bike. It's perfectly possible. It is in your own estimation whether this is safe or not. And if I fall inside the river, it's my risk. I can do this because I swim the Rhine often, and I know that it wouldn't be the end of the world. But basically, it's perfectly possible to simply drive straight. So we see here on the other side fantastic storage buildings with all kinds of agricultural industrial products. And I also like the fact that they're just openly displayed. There is no gates, there's no fences. There's again this type of trust that nobody would come and steal something. You just don't do this in Switzerland, because people also appreciate the type of trust that they're given by this state, and they try to use this trust responsibly. That's something I really admire about this country. Of course, some people will do something stupid, but the general audience, the general public, will act responsibly. This is the reason also why something like the Rhine swimming tradition is actually possible, or the entire culture of river swimming in Switzerland, because you can do it in many cities. This is possible in Switzerland, where it's not possible in other countries. In other countries, as soon as you have ship traffic on a river, the river is off limits to the public. This is not the case in Basel. You have the heaviest ship traffic you can imagine here. Huge tankers that come from Rotterdam all the way up the Rhine, navigate over this river through very narrow bridges, and at the same time you have people swimming next to it. I think this is super beautiful, and something actually that should be copied by other cities, and other cities actually do want to copy but have to change the legislation for that, and also the infrastructure, because it's important. For instance, to gain access to the river, you need to basically sculpt the embankments in such a way that people can really go down to the water. In many river cities this isn't actually possible, because nobody ever had the idea that somebody could want this. Now take this. This is now a wonderful situation of this kind of, how would you say it? These are basically terminal buildings again to unload ships and wheel the goods with a crane inside. And I love these beautiful concrete structures that cantilever out fantastically over the river to shelter the ships that are being unloaded. Or imagine these grain silos that are actually up there. Actually immaculate concrete, wonderful stuff. And again here we have a ramp situation, because below the ramp there is an intake of a conveyor belt, which makes it possible to feed whatever kinds of goods like sand or aggregates and so on inside, from the ship inside the harbor. And I mean, for any lover of architecture, this is pure wonderland, because basically you have the feeling this is like El Lissitzky on drugs. Basically, you see all these kind of huge crane buildings cantilevering out in all directions and giving you really heart attacks in the best way, because you get like spatial sensations and experiences like not many buildings can actually give you. What we're going to do now is we're going to go straight along this path. Actually, the harbor area ends now. We have to be careful. Vielen Dank. Dankeschön. This is also something I like. Pedestrians and cyclists respect each other, and you don't drive too fast, because you appreciate this public space that you're given. This gate, for instance, for a long time was closed. Hello. Now it's open, and now the character of the path changes a little bit, as you can see. There's still pumps here, for instance. Now the way becomes a bit rougher on the right side behind the fence. Schönen guten Tag. You see already some of the harbor infrastructure buildings, and the shoreline, however, is kept with this rudimentary nature, with this vegetation. And these two characters coexist beautifully, almost unconsciously, of each other side by side. So this is a very popular hiking path, as you can see. Many families walk down this path. You can hear the birds and the engines of the facilities, of the production facilities at the harbor. This changes now from the harbor into actual heavy-duty industry, of chemical industry, life science industries, pharmaceutical industries, and so on. All kinds of, heavy-duty industry that makes a bulk of the money that Basel lives off, and this entire region. And I love the idea that this hike, this is a little bit edgy. one could smoothen that, that this hike actually makes you understand the crazy ways in which natural landscape and industrial landscape bleed into each other and create a wonderful collage of all these various atmospheres and characters that make up our lives. And these things coexist in open contradictions. So here I enjoy this kind of romantic fantasy of some untouched nature, as long as I just watch to the river and see the greenery in front of me. Again, some kind of a challenging condition. But then I only need to turn right to see like a huge industrial campus that has its own kind of romanticism and charm and beauty. And these two different forms of sublime combine each other and create a very unique charm of this territory. And the simple fact that this path exists makes it possible for me to experience the ways in which these two landscapes overlap and inform each other. This is a unique opportunity. You don't have that anymore downstream the Rhine. Hallo, guten Tag. And that's why I think this is something precious that needs to be protected, not closed. And I hope very much that the government of Basel-Land will have talks with... now I need to quickly just get off the bike. Talks with the Harbor Authority to make them understand that this space is of public interest and that this space couldn't be produced anymore and that this space is actually unique and should be actually declared, if I would have a say in it, UNESCO World Heritage, clearly. Because where else would you be able to see this? Where else would you be able, within 20 minutes, to experience such a roller coaster of emotions, of the psychogeography of the modern city, and end up in such a lovely, beautiful park spot like here, where people suntan and prepare the barbecue as they dream of a lazy afternoon and enjoy the river. So, whenever you're in Basel, rent a bike and take this trip. You will not regret it. It's super cool. Bye bye.